first manned mission to space. The Indian Space Research Organization has already set the process in motion. A young woman named Vyom Mitra will ride to space in the first test flight of the human space mission Gaganyaan. Yes, you heard it right, but this yes, you have heard it right, but this Vyom Mitra, not a real female, it is a human resembling model or a half humanoid model, and this is the result of a year-long toil of the ISRO Inertial System Unit, Trivandrum. Her body stops at the Her body stops at the torso and has no legs. The humanoid will simulate the human functions required for space before real astronauts take off in August 2022. ISRO will send the half humanoid model in a space capsule around the end of 2020 or early 2021 to study how she and later real astronauts respond to living outside Earth in controlled zero-gravity conditions. Two trial flights without crew will take place with a humanoid, the first around December 2020 and the second around July 2021. She can do switch panel operations, environment control, and life support system functions, be a companion, converse with the astronauts, recognize them, and also respond to their queries. Interesting it sounds. Basuji, please tell us more about Vyom Mitra.
To carry out tests during space flight on a human body, because ISRO didn't have any facility to test those functions, and as you know, space flight is a very risky business, because at the time of takeoff, when the rocket launches, then the passengers inside, the astronauts, they experience a very strong G-force, almost 5 to 6 times as we feel on Earth. But as soon as it reaches the orbit and the capsule is released, it becomes zero gravity, that is no gravity. So to withstand these two extremes of gravity is a very difficult task for normal human beings, and that's why human beings have to be trained specifically to face these kind of situations. And that is done on ground. But for testing this in actual space flight, you need something which can simulate the human system and record those changes or the responses of the body to those forces, G forces, 0 G force and 6 or 7 times G force. So this humanoid, Vyom Mitra, which has been devised and developed by ISRO, will do this particular function, will play this particular function during the first 2 flights of the proposed human flights by ISRO.
Yeah.
And as you have said, that she can communicate in voice, she can talk to the, like a human being, and, send commands and also manipulate things. As you said, the, environment system, the climate control system inside the spacecraft. So all these things will be done by a robot and not by a human being in the first 2 flights. And these are to ensure that when a manned flight actually takes place in 2022, early 2022, then everything goes on smoothly. So this is a very major step that ISRO has taken, because already ISRO has done a lot of groundwork for preparing for the manned mission, because they have already carried out tests for the re-entry mission. That is, once you send human beings into space, they have to return to Earth, and while returning they have to face certain threats or dangers, because the capsule in which human beings will travel, when the capsule enters the atmosphere, it encounters very high temperatures of the order of 5,000 degrees or more, which the astronauts have to be protected against. And for that you need to design a space capsule which can withstand that kind of heat. And ISRO has already tested a space capsule which can withstand that kind of temperatures during re-entry. That has been done. Then there is another device which is called the crew escape system.
Yeah.
Because if there is some problem with the rocket, then the crew have to be taken to safety. And that has also been tested by ISRO. And they've also developed the space suit, because space suit is a very special kind of suit which protects the astronauts from the conditions of space, that is zero gravity and very low temperature and almost zero pressure. So these very vital components required for a human flight has already been tested by ISRO. So this Vyomitra is another step forward towards getting ready for the manned space flight.
For how long she is going to be in the space, and what are the preparations ISRO made for her survival?
But as far as technology is concerned,
no, technology,
robotics is concerned.
Yes, no, as I told you, that her particular function will only be to test the technology which has been used to design this space module, and of course the other components, that is during launch, during the release of the capsule into space, and then its return to Earth through the atmosphere. So all these things will be monitored by this particular humanoid robot, and which will be monitored from ground. Because all the things like heartbeat, blood pressure, all these things will be simulated, and whatever changes occur in these functions, that will be monitored from Earth, and that will give the ISRO scientists some idea about what kind of protection needed to be taken, and what kind of other exigencies or provisions have to be made to keep the astronauts who go into space safe and make them return safely.
While choosing a humanoid for this purpose,
for testing the space flight, but ISRO has gone in for a humanoid because it will give a more realistic, data on the condition of a human being when it goes to space, and what kind of changes need to be done, what kind of preparation have to be done. All these things are all interlinked, because without going to space you cannot really create condition of space, because for going to space, 4 Air Force personnel have already been selected, and they are going to Russia for training for 11 months. And what they will do is basically they will undergo tests like centrifuge tests, and then learning to work under zero gravity, because they immerse them in large pools of water to simulate the zero gravity, and then make them do some work. So all this training have to be given. But during the initial 2 missions that will use this humanoid, ISRO will come to know about something more, because they will actually test the situation in space, not in simulated space conditions. Because when you do the training, you are creating some simulated condition, because it is not real space. Because when you use a centrifuge to simulate gravity or high gravity, that is not the condition you experience in space. While the rocket takes off, you actually face the real high G force, which cannot be done in a centrifuge, because it is a rotating body. So all these things, although some simulation is necessary and lot of experience can be gained by simulation, the actual thing that happens in real time and in space, that can be tested very well with this, using this humanoid robot.
looking from this perspective, what changes ISRO has made in the design of Gaganyaan?
Now the space capsule which they are going to launch, in which these astronauts, Indian astronauts, will go, it will weigh 7 tons. It's a very heavy body which have to be lifted to an orbit of about 400 kilometers, where it will stay. So the capsule has already been designed, and its re-entry has been tested by ISRO. So at least we can be sure that it will return back safely after it is released into space. And the other things, the environment control system, that is yet to be done, because that they are testing. But in the meanwhile, you see, after the astronauts who are going to Russia, after the return, they will be again given some training in India. And in the meanwhile, some doctors, medical doctors are being sent to France, where they will learn how to test or how to monitor the astronauts in space. So all these trainings, we are taking help of Russia and France for preparing to send our human beings into space.
Actively in space. What efforts have been made to keep them activated and keep the food interest of astronauts intact?
The conventional way in which we eat our food on Earth cannot be used in space because of the zero gravity situation. So food is packed in a very different way. Especially liquids and other things, they have to be packed in pouches, which have to be, sucked from the pouch. And that's why, the taste, of course, you can always alter the taste by adding some spices and all. But the thing is that the touch, the feel of the food will change. And that is very, difficult thing to sometimes accept always. Because, something which you enjoy as a crisp thing on Earth, if you cannot get that as crisp in space, you may not like it. But there is no way out. You have to do it and you have to learn to appreciate it. And
On the food, what are the plans to work on the variety of food for the astronauts?
enormous possibility by which you can change the recipe, the taste and the flavor of foods. And it is also difficult to anticipate what the astronauts will like because each individual has got his own liking, So that way I think ISRO will carry out some kind of rough testing with the astronauts who are being sent about what kind of food they like, and will try to prepare that kind of food and provide them that kind of food in space.
And some fruits, nuts, and some irradiated food, I think.
No, irradiated is a different aspect altogether because irradiated only to sort of,
For long shelf life to protect from bacteria.
Make sure that there is no pathogen
Yeah.
in those fruits and all. But as I told you, fruits and other things also will not be, the astronauts will not be able to eat them as they do on Earth. Because again, it has to be packed in a different way and then eaten in a different way. So when you go to space, you normally cannot use the food that we are used to on Earth because of various reasons. Because, if there is a crisp thing which can produce some, powders and other things, which can simply drift away in this spacecraft and damage systems. So that will not be done. So anyway, I think ISRO has been, as you said, that institute which is working on this, they have given, their attention to these factors, and they will design food which will be acceptable to the astronauts. And
That has been undertaking to fix the problem of the carbon dioxide.
which can be used to absorb carbon dioxide, because simple thing is any acidic solution will absorb carbon dioxide and utilize it. I'm not very sure about how ISRO intends to do it, but carbon dioxide is not a very difficult thing to control because it can be neutralized very easily. So they must have already designed system to remove the carbon dioxide and make the interior of the spacecraft safe. But when you do experiments in zero gravity, it's a totally different situation because materials behave differently under zero gravity. And so the spacecraft gives you a unique position to carry out experiments under zero gravity, which is not possible to do on Earth, like crystallization and so many other things. Because in absence of gravity, crystals are much better formed and much larger and all, which you can never get on Earth. So obviously, I think the basic idea of sending human beings to space is to carry out experiments under zero gravity, which are not possible to do on Earth. And that's a huge advance in any, kind of research on material science and all. He has already planned to set up a space station, a very small space station, which will remain in orbit for maybe a few months. Because, this particular mission, Gaganyaan, it is only, sending 3 astronauts for 7 days. It's a very short period. But if you have a space station, then you can send astronauts to live on the space station for maybe weeks or months. That will be definitely a big advance for Indian space missions.
There is a section of society that feels that when as a there are so many problems we have to deal with, like poverty, sanitation. Why we are spending so much on these type of programs?
We cannot just ignore. And what we are doing, because already our space missions and space program has given a lot of benefit to the common man. The kind of telemedicine and all that we are having, which we never would have had without our space program. So space program has become an essential part of India in the sense for the development of its economy and for the welfare of its people.